Are you ready to grow your company to 8 figures? In this show, we give you real tactical advice from real 8-figure entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Scaling Secrets Podcast.
Boom. What's up, guys? And we're back for another episode of the Scaling Secret Podcast presented by Otter PR. Today, we have a very special guest, one of the other co-founders of Otter PR, Mr. Scott Bartnick, former engineer. Well, actually, you're never a former engineer. You're always an engineer at mine. Whether you're building businesses or bridges, it doesn't matter. Scott's an absolute genius. And today, we're going to talk about building systems and automation for scaling your business. Obviously, everybody wants to scale their business. So I really think that everyone will love this episode. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. So let's just get right into it. All right. Automation, systems. How do you identify systems and automation?
So the first thing we do is we look for weaknesses. So what I mean by weaknesses is opportunities to improve a process that would otherwise be manually done and have opportunity for mistakes. So one of the simplest things we do to increase revenue for businesses, especially if they don't have digital footprints, is online scheduling. You think that sounds way too simple, but so many businesses don't do that. And first off, you're potentially reducing headcount. So you don't necessarily need an admin who's always answering the phone and scheduling. And then you reduce errors and mistakes because you don't have people showing up at the wrong time because there's reminders. Sometimes without online scheduling, you can take deposits beforehand. So there's a lot of ways to basically implement solutions that are automated that are going to reduce mistakes and potentially reduce manpower or allow that manpower to focus on things that require more intelligence, require more brain power versus, scheduling is going to be the same thing every single time. Whereas potentially doing a sales call or kind of preparing the back end for that consultation, whatever that is, you save that manpower for that.
Now, explain to people a little bit about your background. Like I said in the beginning of the show, you were a former engineer, but you're always a real engineer at heart forever. So explain to people your background real quick, and then we'll go into the actual meat and potatoes.
Yeah, of course. So I worked for a Fortune 500 company for years in operations management. So what I did for them was I improved workflows. As simple as that. And that's the same thing we do here with automation is we're looking at how do we make something better? So my background, I'm an industrial and systems engineer. And what that really means, it was focused on data systems, but it really boils down to making things more efficient. I don't build bridges. I don't create things from scratch. I'm usually looking at a process and saying, hey, you're doing this wrong in the sense of, this is taking you 1 hour and it should take you 1 minute. And so that's what we've done here is we've really been able to scale based on the fact of automation.
What's one of the biggest things when you're looking and analyzing different businesses, different entrepreneurs, whether it's a huge company, big corporation, Fortune 500, or it's a small mom and pop shop, what's the biggest issue that you see when clients run into automation problems?
So a lot of it is just not understanding how things work together. So it does take a lot of kind of know how to connect all these pieces and takes years to figure out and really learn. And the biggest thing is sometimes people don't have the vision or don't know what's available to them. So if someone shows you something and says, hey, did you realize that you could do all this automated? The problem is most people didn't realize that in the first place. So they're not even looking for a solution because they didn't know that there was one out there. So whenever I talk to business owners, I really dial down into, hey, what is your biggest issue? What do you spend the most time on? So that 80-20 rule, what are you really majority of your time doing? And then let's figure out how to remove that from your plate. So sometimes it is systems and automation. Sometimes it's a strong org structure. So right now I'm struggling with billing. Billing is a majority of my time. So we're currently recruiting to take that off of my plate. And so that'll free up maybe 10 hours a week where this person is only focused on that because we weren't able to automate 100% of it just because of follow-ups and audits and things like that. But that's the same thing as automation in my mindset. It's structure and building that secret to scaling, like you said, is really, to scale my time. So if I've done the same thing more than once, I really have done a disservice as a leader in the company.
Yeah, no, I love that. When you have so many automations running, like I know you do, how do we make sure that everything's running smooth? Obviously, technology is amazing. We both can agree, and everyone listening can agree that technology is impeccable. Without technology, we'd be back in the Stone Age. Having said that, technology does tend to break, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs aren't even aware that their stuff isn't working unless they manually go out and test it themselves and go through the process. So when you have, 20, 30, maybe 100 different automations, you as co-founder, CEO of this company running the automations with the engineering background? How do you make sure that everything is still running in place and you're not manually checking every single different automation every single day?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's different levels of auditing. So I can't remember I can't remember the name of the book, but basically a lot of large software companies build in automatics that are software based. Obviously, that's going to be harder for an entrepreneur. We don't have that technology on our team, but what it would do is they'll make small changes to the code, and if they'll trigger if say revenue drops below average, or if this happens, the computer will actually self audit, and so they'll be able to within a couple hours realize if say checkout wasn't working because they updated the code. For us, sometimes it's a lagging indicator. So that's where metrics become very important. Is recently we actually had an issue with our email records not being set up properly. And so we realized that we saw revenue dropping and we saw booked calls dropping, and we are like, well, what's going on? And what it was no one was getting their emails. And so it was a lagging indicator, and it took us a while to figure that out. And as part of that project, what we've really focused on is now we're building a data dashboard, which will give us, first off, it focuses on email deliverability and things like that. It'll report that, but also just better data on calls booked, better data on calls closed, things like that in a dashboard, so that we are looking for those fluctuations much quicker. And sometimes it takes a deep dive to really figure it out. And as you know, even we have to update our website all the time. And every time we do an update, something breaks. So that's why we have a developer, and it becomes complicated, but you've got to figure out different methods. And of course, like you said, sometimes we just do manual audits. Right now, I'm going through and auditing a whole bunch of systems to make sure that they're, with all these updates, that they're running properly.
What was the first system that you ran that you thought was going to be amazing and it completely broke? And you might not even realize in the moment, but you're like, oh man, I cannot believe this.
I mean, in all transparency, we probably have 20 to 30 automations that aren't running properly. So we just did a full audit of our CRM. And that was there were a lot of issues in there. A lot of things were pointing to dead links. If you think about a simpler sense at a website, you post something with a link to it, and a year later that link doesn't work. So there are a lot of opportunities like that where, now we have regular audits built into our systems, and part of it is a manual audit, unfortunately. But as you evolve as a company, you need to be looking at these. And if you're rapidly growing and rapidly changing, things are going to break. And sometimes, it's okay for them to break. Every time we have a big breakthrough, we'll make a massive change. We'll fix a whole bunch of things. 10 things will break. And then it's not until we fix those 10 things that we actually see the improvement. And so, but that's just part of business.
Right. Well, how does a business look without systems in 2022? Is it one of those things where, listen, if you don't have systems and automation set up in your business, you're basically screwed? Or can you still kind of get by?
I would say you can get by without automations, but without systems, you're screwed. I mean, in all reality, it's come down to training. So part of our ability to scale so quickly and why we're the fastest growing PR firm in the country is because of our ability to build systems, not just automation, but standard work instructions, where someone comes in, they go through very detailed training. You just did that training, and it takes ideally a month. And we've built that as a school. It's a university for our team. And that's a system. And that what it does is it brings everyone into an equal playing field. I don't care what their degree is. And of course, we want people that specialize in what they're doing. But the fact is that not all schools teach the same, or they don't teach at the same level. And so our job is to do a great assessment, which is part of our system, and then to train them to what we do and to the specific skills, which is a lot of times why we like people that are newer to the space, because they don't have those bad habits yet, and we can ingrain our systems.
That's so crucial. So crucial. Yeah. Explain to people that are listening the difference between systems and automations, because I know that you said that you can get by with you can get by with not having automations, but you definitely cannot get by with systems. Explain to people that maybe thought that was the same thing.
Yeah. So in my mind, automations are something that's automatic. So let's say booking, again, we'll use the booking calendar link. So ideally on your landing page or your website, there's a link, and people can go in and click it, and it'll bring up a calendar, and they can book, and then automatically they'll get a reminder email, they'll get a reminder text message. An hour before their appointment, they'll get another reminder. It could potentially even charge that client X amount for their deposit or the full payment. And all of that is automatic. And then you can even set specific cancellation terms in there. So maybe they can cancel 24 hours ahead of time and get a full refund, and it can automatically do that. Things like that are automatic. So that is both, in my opinion, a system and an automation. But systems are, in a sense, different in the fact that it might not be fully automated, but we have a system to do a podcast every Tuesday. That's a system or a process in place that says, that's not automatic, but there's something on the calendar that says, hey, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, let's get in this room and do a podcast. And so that's structure that's critical to a business, but it's not automatic.
Absolutely. If the system gods came down and said, Scott, listen, you can only use 3, maybe if the gods are feeling good, 4 systems, whether that's Active Campaign or whatever, you can only use 4 in your business forever. What are the 4 most important systems, automations, websites, softwares, etc., that you would tell someone that's starting a business, hey, listen, you can get lost in the sauce. These 3 are crucial to your business, at least for your success.
Yeah, so there are a lot of all-in-one softwares. So we use as our CRM Active Campaign. And Active Campaign is really, in truth, a light CRM. It's very cost-effective to start off. It does scale and get more expensive and has really good features. But the reason why we use it is because it has a lot of automatic workflow. So we're talking about those automations. So I can build in, hey, someone just booked a call, text them at this time, email them at this time. If they, cancel their call, automatically send them a cancellation request or rebook. So all of that is built into that platform. So there gives us a lot of flexibility in there. So I would say some sort of CRM. It doesn't have to be Active Campaign, but I find Active Campaign to be very powerful and very user-friendly. And for smaller, medium-sized business, it's very affordable. The next step, of course, would be like HubSpot or Salesforce, which are much more robust, but take a lot more time and money to set up properly, where you have to custom code that. The other piece would be, I mentioned multiple times, calendar links. Automated calendars are, if I had to pick one thing, it would be automated calendars, because there's just so many things that it can do and so much time it saves. I typically don't negotiate back and forth with someone on a calendar. I will send them my link, and if they don't want to book, probably means they're not a good client for me. If they send me a calendar link, I'll book on theirs. But I'm not going to negotiate time back and forth. I've literally seen emails chains go back hours, and then you get the time zone wrong, and so you're on the wrong time and the wrong call.
Oh man!
Recently we implemented. So I guess the next part is your website is a critical part, is that billing automation. So we do monthly retainers, and it automatically bills them. So figuring out how to properly manage your books and the most automated way possible is going to be critical. So if I had to pick 3, those would be it. I could continue.
For sure.
SMS software, things like that are very powerful.
Absolutely. What scheduling software do you use? Schedule Once or Calendly?
So we use Calendly. We've played with a lot of them. Calendly is very powerful. The reason why we end up sticking with Calendly is the conversions. Compared to other softwares we'd used, we saw an uptick in conversions when running ads or just driving cold traffic to our site.
Yeah, I like Calendly way better too. And I've used them all. Explain to people what HubSpot is.
So HubSpot's just another CRM, same as Salesforce. At a bigger scale, you have SAP. All of these tools do very similar things, but what they're trying to do is aggregate all of your data into one place. So if you think about, again, we're talking about automations and systems, you want all your tools to talk to each other and have one hub of truth. So that's what Active Campaign does for us. So if they book on Calendly, it's in Active Campaign for us. If they fill out a request on our site, it's in Active Campaign for us. And there's a record of those conversations. So especially as you have a growing sales team, it's critical that people can jump in and say, oh, okay, this person's working with Ryan. They talked to him 4 days ago. It looks like things went well. He has a follow-up scheduled. So that way, if they, call the company, you don't sound like we don't know what's going on. It's
Exactly.
really critical. The other tool that I left out and is critical to our business is a project management software. So we use Sauna, which is critical to building workflows and structures that are manual and automated. It's that system of keeping track of those projects. We have hundreds of clients, and there's no way we could track them all and figure out what's going on without some kind of management software.
And also giving like your employees certain lists. What's the difference between using like Asana and just like a Google Note where people just go on and check on Google, oh, I did this, did that? Because obviously I could see someone saying, well, I don't need Asana because I could just do it on Google and I have a small team.
Yeah. So if you have a small team, 1 or 2 people, might not matter for you.
Okay.
If your team's over 5, you need some sort of project management software, because again, if everyone on your team is involved in every project, it's a little bit different. But again, we have a team of 50. And so, sometimes we'll sell media training, which is a different team. So the media trainer will go in and look at all the records. They'll look at all the successes. They'll look at past interviews. And all of that is in either our CRM or our project management software. And a lot of times they'll talk to each other. And so they have that home truth of everything that's going on. So there's no misses in communications. And we'll document if there are issues or if the client had a big success. All of that's documented there. So that way, when we get feedback, we can jump in and see exactly what's going on. And it's really that truth of how do we improve? So it's a record of what's happened in this account. And then, if there was an issue, how do we make sure that issue never happens again? If we couldn't dive down exactly to that issue, we couldn't have solved it. But now we can see, what that potential roadblock was and how do we prevent that.
So it seems like it's pretty important. Now, would you say that your personality is more systems or more extroverted salesy?
I'm way more systems. I am lucky that I'm good at sales and communication. I think that came over time. Part of it is, this is something that I don't talk about a lot, but I'm dyslexic. And so I think that I had to, even though my brain is more engineering, more systems, because of the dyslexia, I had to overcome and learn to communicate at a very high level. And so my entire education was focused on communication.
More EQ, because you were born with high IQ.
Yeah. And so learning both skills were critical for me. But my natural comfort is behind the computer, building systems and letting other people run the show.
Gotcha. How did you learn how to interact with people? Like, what was a main tactic that you used to get you out of your shell? Are you more of an introvert or extrovert type person?
I'm more of an introvert, but I always wanted to be an extrovert. So what I do is mentors. And I think that's critical in any business, is latching on, or in personal life too, is I would always pick someone who had traits that I wanted to mimic and learn from them. And we do that by reading books. We do that by spending time with friends. And so really surrounding yourself with people that will help you build, or reading materials or watching YouTube videos on things that's going to help you build and grow. And so that's really how I did it. And so, I mean, our co-founder, Jay Feldman's a marketing genius. And so that's part of how we work so well together, is I really helped build the systems, and he's really good at it as well. But he also helped build up my communication skills and helped me learn to sell and things like that. And so together we've learned back and forth. And so now I would say that we're pretty interchangeable in the fact that we have very similar skills, but it's because we've helped elevate each other.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Typically, like businesses, for instance, Apple, you had Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was kind of like you, the engineering mindset, but didn't really talk. You're obviously much more outgoing than Steve Wozniak, but Steve Jobs was the sales guy. He would do the presentations. You look at Microsoft, Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Bill Gates was selling it. Paul Allen was coding it, doing all the back end stuff. A lot of these huge companies, you get a couple like Amazon stuff that the guy did it all himself, but a lot of these big companies have someone that's selling and is like the face and is good communicator, high EQ and like good IQ. And then you have the opposite, where someone can manage, they're not like a Rain Man, but they're super, super high IQ, and EQ is maybe average or maybe a bit below average. And I feel like the biggest companies have that mix. What if you're two extroverts and you love each other and you want to build a business, but someone hates doing systems and they just want to talk to people and network and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I think that's how it doesn't work, is unless you hire the right staff. So if you have if you had two of me, the company would be weaker. But in that sense, potentially I could hire a person that would help. And those are hard to find. That person that's going to help lead that sales and marketing team. But the same thing with everyone has splinter skills. And that's, if you're really gifted at one thing, you're going to have splinter skills. So if you look at Elon Musk, he's a genius. He's obviously the richest person in the world, and he's building multiple companies, but it's clear that he has splinter skills where he does things, but you can still see that it's not natural to him. And it doesn't necessarily feel right to hear him speak. And nothing against him. He's done an amazing job and people follow him and love him, but he's not a natural speaker. He's learned to speak. And you can tell that he's done that over years of practice and had, I'm sure, coaches and things like that. And that just shows that you can still be the leader and do both, but you use resources. There's no way he's gotten to this level without having coaches, media experts, PR experts helping him through this and walking him through things to say, what to say, presenting. So that was definitely what seems to be a learned skill for him.
But it's safe to say that if you're a natural born introvert versus a natural born extrovert, it's safe to say if you're starting a company, try to find someone that's opposite of you.
Yeah. Or focus on learning that. So I've always personally, my next big goal is to be on stage speaking. And it's not natural to me. I get nervous when I'm giving canned speeches. I have no problem doing this kind of communication, but those speeches are very painful for me. Whereas you talk about my business partner, Jay, he's natural on stage. He's good at it. It comes natural. He'll practice for an hour and go on stage and crush it. Whereas for me, it would take weeks. But that's something because I'm learning. But eventually, I used to not be a great speaker in situations like this. So you can learn all of that, and those can be learned skills. And so even though I am naturally an introvert, in a business setting, I'm definitely not introverted because I understand there's a time and place, and there's no reason for me to be shy or quiet in my business.
Yeah, absolutely. You can learn EQ. Can't really learn IQ.
Yeah.
You're better off being born with IQ, and then you can learn EQ. There's not a lot of evidence saying that you can really increase IQ. And also Richard Branson was dyslexic. So, if it's good enough for Richard Branson, I think it might be good for you too. What if you're your own business, right? You're your own person. and you're terrible at systems. Maybe you're a natural born extrovert. You don't want a business partner though. This is your idea, your baby, like they like to say, but you're absolutely horrible at it. But you know, it's important. What would you recommend that person that's starting a business right now that's maybe not that good at systems? They don't understand how to use HubSpot. They don't understand how to zap stuff together using Zapier. Like Zapier, like what is that, a taser, right? Like what is that? What would you tell that person that doesn't want a partner to do it similar to like you, but wants to do it all themselves, but they know they have a weakness? What would you tell that person?
You've got to hire a coach. You've got to hire someone to implement it for you. You have to YouTube tutorials, whatever you can afford. So obviously you can afford it, find someone that can do it for you because they're going to do it right and better. So you find someone, and also when you're looking, don't look for, I hate to say this, but don't look for an entrepreneur that hasn't done it. So if their whole career is only setting up, HubSpot, then my question is, well, what is your business acumen to understand how to do it to actually improve revenue? So when you work with someone like me, who's not, maybe I'm not a professional at setting up active campaign, but I've done it to scale one of the fastest growing companies in the country. Clearly that person has proof of concept when it comes to automation. So make sure whoever you're working with, whether that be a sales coach or whether that be an automation coach or someone who's done it, can say, hey, well, I have experience at a Fortune 500 company. I did it for 3 years there. They paid me well over 6 figures to go optimize. I've done, $10 million cost outs through automation and through systems. So that's why I'm qualified. So don't look for someone that's only, I self-employed, all they do is set it up. I just don't trust those people.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, Scott. Well, listen, I loved having you on the show. Obviously, you'll be back talking about other expertise. Before we get out of here, is there anything that you want to tell the listeners?
No, it was great talking to you guys. I appreciate having me on the show. And if you guys want to follow me, my Instagram's Found Scott. So that's Found Scott, and you guys can all respond to all DMs there. All
right, guys. You're here to hear, folks, from Justin to Scott, Scott to Justin. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast, and we're out. Bye-bye, y'all.